Recent reporting indicates that the far-right Trump-loving Freedom Caucus of House Republicans is looking to purge its own ranks of those it deems insufficiently loyal, and word on the street is, of all people, Marjorie Taylor Greene is heading to the proverbial chopping block. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So one of the many great lines in William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar is when Caesar is told by a soothsayer, an oracle, that Caesar should beware the Ides of March, March 15th, because that's the date at which, in the play, Caesar would eventually be assassinated by members of the Roman Senate. And so March 15th is seen as a traitor's holiday, and beware the Ides of March is, an idiom to refer to political treachery. And the reason that I refer to this line is for a few reasons. Number one, the story is about political treachery. And number two, the irony is that the people involved in this particular story, of political treachery, have probably never read Julius Caesar and are probably incapable of reading it, in fact. So Politico broke this story, but the Rolling Stone has a funnier article about it, so we'll stick with them. Essentially, the story is this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, according to sources, is on thin ice with the Freedom Caucus. And the Freedom Caucus is a group that we've discussed in multiple videos. It's the far-right element of the congressional GOP. So it's the members in the House of Representatives of the Republican Party who are particularly cultishly devoted to Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Chip Roy, etc., and so forth. So even though the Republican Party collectively is deranged, this is the most deranged element of an otherwise pretty exceptionally deranged group as is. And they have been a nightmare for Speaker Kevin McCarthy because McCarthy has a razor-thin margin in the House. He wants to be Speaker. They want him to be a political weapon or a political tool of Donald Trump's and a weapon against Democrats and President Biden. But the more moderate elements of the GOP aren't really completely in line or in lockstep with Donald Trump's agenda. So McCarthy has a foot in both worlds. And those worlds are dividing. Like there is a chasm opening between the Freedom Caucus and the GOP, the rest of the GOP in many respects. And McCarthy is at risk of falling in, which is hilarious because he is completely responsible for that. He's brought it on himself. He, like every other member of the establishment Republican Party, had the opportunity to preempt or derail or neutralize Trump's hold on the GOP years ago, right? But instead, stupidly, he thought he could weaponize Trump, like many of them did, for short-term gain. And they didn't think about what Trump's hold would be on the GOP years down the road. They probably thought he wouldn't be a factor, right? But here we are in 2023, and Donald Trump is still the leader of the Republican Party, which resembles a cult more than anything else. So, getting back to the Freedom Caucus and Marjorie Taylor Greene, McCarthy needs the patronage of the Freedom Caucus in order to remain Speaker. He needed their patronage to become Speaker in the first place, and he needs their patronage to remain Speaker because at this point, any member, literally any member of Congress can trigger a vote to vacate, a motion to vacate, which is basically the American version of the vote of no confidence, and trigger a vote which could potentially kick Kevin McCarthy out of his chair, which would be incredibly embarrassing. And McCarthy's speakership has been embarrassing enough, and we're only 6 months in, so he doesn't need that. So basically, he has to appease two mutually exclusive groups. And the reason that Marjorie Taylor Greene, that should be a new nickname, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene has to, the reason she appears in this is because she made the decision relatively early on to back McCarthy's bid for the speakership. I mean, I'm sure she would want a more openly deranged Trumpian to take the role, but there was absolutely no shot that Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz would ever have the popularity to become Speaker because you would need a majority of members of the House of Representatives. No Democrat would ever vote for somebody like that, and odds are many members of the Republican Party wouldn't either. So it had to be someone more palatable, like Kevin McCarthy. And actually, in a moment of relative political sophistication, Marjorie Taylor Greene made the calculus, well, you know what? If Kevin McCarthy is the best chance a Republican has to become Speaker of the House, then, and he needs our votes, then maybe it would be a good idea to get him indebted to us. Maybe we can extort him for concessions, and so we'll back his speakership And in return, we'll become close allies of him, and he'll have to give us things in order to have our patronage, etc., and so forth. So again, relatively speaking, that was pretty sophisticated strategy on Marjorie Taylor Greene's part. The problem is this. We're 6 months in, and McCarthy has made decisions which many members of the Freedom Caucus despise, most recently being the debt ceiling negotiation between McCarthy and President Biden, in which, as Freedom Caucus members would tell you, Biden got the better end of the deal by far, being a vastly superior and more sophisticated negotiator than McCarthy on his best day. Well, that pissed the Freedom Caucus off because now the GOP has egg on his face. Biden gets a political victory, and he gets to avoid having an economic catastrophe on his watch, which would have been very beneficial for the Republican Party, and in particular, Donald Trump's reelection bid. So they're furious at McCarthy for working with Biden in that respect. Then McCarthy has also tried to preempt and neutralize any attempt by Republicans to impeach Biden because McCarthy knows, that number one, there's a very real possibility that there wouldn't be enough Republicans to pass an impeachment vote in the House, because many Republicans, again, even the more moderate ones, as much as they don't like Joe Biden, probably don't think that any of this rises to an impeachable offense. But even if it does, even if they can get a successful vote to impeach Biden, there has to be a 2/3 conviction in the Senate, which will never happen. And Republicans actually have to make their case in a trial, right? So you actually have to get Republicans to stand up and manage the case and present evidence like you would in a trial. And there's no Republican capable of doing that against Joe Biden, in a way that's cogent and sophisticated and persuasive. So it would be a long, drawn-out embarrassment for the GOP, which would ultimately fail. And many people believe that it would damage the GOP's chances to win re-election or to expand majorities in 2024. So because McCarthy isn't all gung-ho on impeaching Biden, he's further pissed off the Freedom Caucus, which again leads us to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Some members of the Freedom Caucus are contemplating booting members who no longer meet its standards. Politico notes that the members who want to purify the caucus's ranks have signaled that Greene is a target, fearing that she has become a little too cozy with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The Freedom Caucus has been openly critical, if not combative, towards the party's leadership, and harboring members allied with said leadership could compromise its ability to take the brass to task. Now, Scott Perry, who's a member of the Freedom Caucus, he's actually the chairman, told Politico that he denied there were requests to kick Greene out or other members, some of which have been questioned for not being active enough in the group's pursuits. The tension is certainly notable, though. We're at a critical point right now, according to Representative Ralph Norman, who is a member, again, of the Freedom Caucus. So that's where we are. Now, again, we don't know what will happen, but it's funny to think that Kevin McCarthy writ large and Marjorie Taylor Greene in this particular example with the Freedom Caucus may have put themselves in a position where this particular caucus, who is not interested in governance and bipartisanship or anything like that, they're interested in virtue signaling for their cult leader, Donald Trump, that they may end up being devoured by the very monsters they either allied with or attempted to unleash in their favor. So let's watch this because it could get really funny really fast.